Welcome back to Educator.com's Advanced English Grammar course. This lesson is part of our spelling unit, and it's on the I before E rule. Let's get started. Alright, we begin as always with a brief lesson overview. We're going to talk about the rule that we're talking about in this lesson. We're going to talk about exceptions to the rule. Yes, every rule has exceptions, including that one. And we're going to do a little bit of practice, and we're going to conclude with some tips, ways to improve your spelling. Alright, so what is the rule? The rule is something that's taught to most school children in English-speaking countries, and it goes like this. I before E, except after C, or when sounding like A, as in neighbor or way. Basically, there's a lot of EI and IE vowel combinations in a lot of English words, and many English spellers have trouble keeping it straight. Is it IE or EI? Because it varies from word to word. So the rule is, in general, I comes before E, unless there's C in front of them, or the verb combination is making an A sound. So, examples. The word grieve, I-E. Convenience, I-E. Lenient, I-E. But, here are some examples of how it works after C. Ceiling, E-I. Conceit, E-I. Conceive, E-I. Deceit and deceive, E-I. Perceive, receipt, and receive. All E-I because they're after C. Some examples of the combination sounding like A, beige, ate, freight, neighbor, sleigh, vain, way, and faint. Now, one quick word about this particular word faint. We are not saying F-A-I-N-T, meaning very light, not very strong, or pass out. None of those words are what we mean. The EI version of faint means to fake something, to start to do something to fake someone out in order to trick them. It's very often used in boxing and chess and a few other occupations. Alright, so here are some exceptions to the I before E rule. Most exceptions to this rule are either loan words from other languages or words that were pronounced differently a few centuries ago before the Great English Vowel Shift. They worked with the rule then, and they haven't had their spellings changed since because, frankly, it's too much trouble. Yeah, English speakers are lazy. You just have to learn the exceptions. Sorry. Here are some of the major exceptions. Conscience, in fact, just about anything that has the S-C-I-E, so science and conscience and prescience, all that stuff. When you got that S-C going sh or s, and then you have I-E, yeah, it's I-E even though it's after C. Similarly, counterfeit, that used to be counterfeit, so it used to sound like A. Either used to be either, so there you go. Foreign is foreign in some accents, so there you go. Similarly, forfeit, height, leisure, neither, science, sees, seizure, species, that C-I-E when it's going she's, the C-I makes the sh sound, so they have to be together. Sufficient, there's that sh again, and weird. Weird is probably my favorite exception to this rule because I can always remember that it is spelled weirdly. It violates the rule because it's weird. Alright. Here's some practice. See if you can figure out which of these words should have the EI combination and which should have I before E. Here are the sentences. The baby let out a shriek as she was picked up. Many people pierce their ears each year. Since she retired, she has led a life of leisure. What a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. Seize them, cried the king to his guards. I waited at the crossing for the freight train to pass. Charles Darwin wrote The Origin of Species. I have a grievance against your terrible spelling. The chess player risked his bishop in a feint. And you can't return that shirt without the receipt. And finally, my very favorite, English spelling is weird. Take a good look, pause the video if you need to, see if you can figure out which way to spell each of these words. Alright, here are your answers. The baby let out a shriek, I before E except after C. This is a regular word, so it should be S-H-R-I-E. Shriek as she was picked up. Many people pierce their ears each year. This one was correctly spelled, I before E. Since she retired, she has led a life of leisure. That is an EI because in some accents it's leisure. It sounds like A, and so it's just kind of become one of the exceptions to the rule. What a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive, EI, because it comes after C. Seize them, cried the king to his guards. This is an EI just because it's an exception. Probably sounded different before the vowel shift. I waited at the crossing for the freight train to pass. That one was correctly spelled because it's sounding as A, freight. Charles Darwin wrote The Origin of Species. There you have the IE because it's making that sh sound and the CI makes the sh. I have a grievance. That's a regular one, I before E, against your terrible spelling. The chess player risked his bishop in a feint. It's sounding as A, so it's correctly spelled EI. You can't return that shirt without the receipt. That's EI because it comes after C and it's not going sh. And finally, English spelling is weird, and weird is spelled weirdly. Here are some ways to improve your spelling. The first and most important is, of course, read. Read, 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 read. The better you are at looking at words and thinking about the correct spellings and seeing the correct spellings in your head, the better you'll be at finding incorrect spellings and going, that looks wrong. So it really doesn't matter what you read as long as you like it and it's interesting and it's reasonably well spelled. Next, you can improve your spelling by playing word games like Scrabble or Words with Friends. You can do word puzzles like crosswords and jumbles. All of these games emphasize good spelling skills and force you to think about how letters fit together. It helps you remember some of these spelling tricks. Next, you can use mnemonics, which are memory tricks to help you remember tricky spelling rules. The one I like to use is that weird is spelled weirdly. It violates the rule. Next, when you write with a word processing program like Microsoft Word, keep spell check turned on. And keep a dictionary handy just because spell check is incredibly stupid, and just because a red squiggle appears in the word doesn't mean it's wrong. Finally, did I mention? Read. No, seriously, I'm not kidding. It's the most important thing you can do. Just read. And that's all for this lesson. Thank you for watching. Educator.com.